Greetings, blessings, and gratitude for choosing Info Dissected, the podcast with Chuks Kae-C and our special guest, Kalisha. In this episode, we need to talk about accountability.
Accountability, I looked up the definition and it says the obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or take account for one's actions. And I thought the or was interesting to me, which kind of the angle I was going to take was more to look at like what does it look like for individuals and how different people's perceptions of accountability can impact whether it's received or not the right way. And then when I've looked at the dictionary definition, I've seen that there's the or shows me, okay, it's the willingness to accept responsibility, but it's also to take account for the actions, which shows there could be a difference in the perception of accountability, and both perceptions could be right, is how I kind of read that or took that. So I can throw that out there, give that to the floor, and say, what does accountability look like for the both of you, and maybe start from there?
I think for me, it doesn't include or the word but in the what's the word? The reflection.
Reflection.
Yeah, reflection and acknowledgement. Because if I'm holding myself accountable, what anyone else has said or done in the situation is a completely different issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not addressing the situation from okay, I've done this and I've done this, but you did this and this, because I don't think that's holding yourself fully accountable. It shouldn't be an opportunity to pinpoint other people's flaws or any other issues you have with another person. If you've got an issue with something that I've done, then raise it at that point or at any other point.
Or at a later time. Fair.
When I'm addressing an issue that I have. So I would just say that accountability is wholeheartedly accepting what you may have done in a situation to cause someone else discomfort and accepting that it needs to be addressed, addressing it in a respectful manner, and allowing you both to move forward. That doesn't mean that the person has to or may not even want to move forward, but the accountability, I don't believe, is about the other person. It's about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah, I'd probably agree obviously with the broad definition, but for me, me taking accountability, or I don't want to say my expectation of others taking accountability, because I suppose I shouldn't really have an expectation, but what I would deem as somebody else taking accountability would be similar to what you said, in the sense of it's not really about what somebody else has done or why I have taken that action. But that is something that I think I have to be conscious of, because I feel like when I take accountability for something, I automatically kind of go to, why have I done that? Like, why have I lived in that way? You know, I kind of want to give a reason or a justification almost, which can be sticky and can, as you say, almost kind of undo the acknowledgement if there's what is deemed as an excuse attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's something I'm conscious and wary of, because I know it's a kind of, a reaction, or, it's something that I am susceptible to doing. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Although I know there have been times when I have probably gone down that route myself of, trying to find an excuse or the justification or the reason or the explanation. And yeah, also kind of defining the difference between an explanation and an excuse. So yeah, that would be my understanding.
I hear that. I hear a lot of, what it is, when I'm listening to you, and I'm like, it's kind of almost getting back into a bit of the last episode that we've done. So I'm hearing in my head, it's like, okay, defense mechanism. And then I'm kind of saying, what's the difference between a defense mechanism and a coping mechanism? And it's kind of, I ain't got an answer because I just literally thought about it in my head just now. But I'm thinking, I've got here like, what are the barriers to accountability? From, I can't remember, one of you two was talking, and what are the barriers to accountability? And then obviously looking at myself, because somehow, some way, I managed to always find a way to bring stuff back to myself. I will say that I feel like, for me personally, the barriers to me taking accountability are a need to defend being wronged, or a wrong perception, or I don't know, a perceived mischaracterization or whatever. So, but in short, the defensive is
Not wanting to
probably
be the bad guy.
that as well. And yeah, so I think that both of your kind of definitions or understandings of accountability definitely had made me take stock and think, okay, there are definitely times where I've either thought I was taking accountability or tried to take accountability, and because of either the defensiveness or because of the not wanting to, or to not enjoying being the bad person or the wrong person in the situation, then kind of almost now I'm putting my foot even more into being the bad person in the situation by trying to defend myself and not making the other person feel heard, or not making the other person feelings, or even just analysis of the direct situation be acknowledged. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me, to be honest, it's almost dependent. It's maybe a little bit bad to say, but it's almost dependent on the person and how I feel about them, and also the situation. So, for example, if it's somebody who I, previously have some kind of issue with, or some kind of problem with, or I'm not on that great of terms with them, it's much harder for me to take blanket accountability for something than it is when it's somebody who I care about. And then it's kind of almost the opposite. If it's somebody I care about and somebody who kind of I want to see me in a positive light, I can almost then go the opposite way. And then it becomes kind of like, self-depreciation, self-blame, it's just kind of I'm just awful, basically. I'm terrible, please forgive me. I'll do whatever I can to not make you feel like that, or not, do that again. It's kind of then almost overkill, which I suppose can then almost could come across as self-pity, and then it's almost again taking away that accountability. It's not balanced, it's not yeah, not really productive, when it kind of goes that far the other way.
I think in order to want to hold yourself accountable for something you may have said or done, you would have to care about the person or the situation.
Yeah.
Because accountability is an uncomfortable feeling, I think, because it's reflecting on yourself and what you've done wrong in a situation. And I don't think there's anyone who I'm gonna make myself feel uncomfortable for if they really are not someone that I genuinely care for, because I prefer not to put myself through that, even though that is the wrong attitude to have, because ultimately, and like I was saying in the beginning, it's about self and doing the right thing in that situation, rather than I've upset someone that I really care about, so I need to fix this, which is tends to be what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that, because when I was listening to you, I was like, okay, I get it, but I feel like what you're talking about when you're talking about taking accountability with someone that you care about, someone that you've got love for, someone who you care about, whether they are in or out of your life, for example. Yeah, that can be done and is done generally by people. I think the real, I don't know if test is the right word,
Challenge.
or the real challenge and the real kind of, yes, but I'm just going to use the word test. The test of your kind of real ability to take accountability Gosh, it sounded terrible. But do you know what I mean? It's like, or integrity, or you know what I mean, righteousness, or whatever the dramatic word you're gonna use is when you, or when I am able, let me just make I man statements. When I'm able to do that for, or for somebody, is it for somebody? But anyway, for somebody who I don't like, and I know that I'm
Or
able
sorry,
to do.
sorry
Go
to
on. No, no,
interrupt,
no.
or not even necessarily that you don't like them, but maybe there's an underlying feeling of like you feel like you've been wronged by them, and they've not necessarily taken any accountability from that, even though you have addressed it. However, it's somebody who still is in some capacity a part of your life, you know? So it's like, although you haven't, it might be a situation where at some point those ties are cut and that's no longer a relationship you've got in your life, whether romantic or otherwise. But there are definitely situations where, you can feel like wronged or hard done by somebody, or that in some sense, actually your actions weren't that, they did actually happen for a reason, although it was the wrong reaction or the wrong behavior or whatever, that stemmed from something that was also wrong. I feel like in those kind of situations, that's when it's a struggle to just take a blanket responsibility for your action and just be like, okay, what I did was wrong, despite what your actions were. I was
So then that's the
also
question.
wrong.
That's the question then. Maybe for both of you I can pose is that is taking accountability dependent on you being completely in the wrong. So the example that you gave is somebody who has wronged you in some capacity or has wronged you and not taken accountability. Does that mean that you are not supposed to take responsibility or take accountability for the wrong that you done?
I would say
that
that
right
is
and all
no,
that
no.
sort
Well,
of
that's the point. For me, I feel like that is
thing.
when that kind of true form of accountability does kind of kick in, because it's like, despite somebody, you can't control that. You can't control like what somebody else is doing or how somebody else is making you feel or whatever. Like you can't.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can really do to kind of get rid of that. But what you can do for your own self-worth or whatever, for your own like love of self, whatever you want to call it, what you can do is take responsibility for your own action and your own wrong and try to correct that going forward, whether it be with that person, with somebody else, however that may be. I feel like that is, for me anyway, that's the hardest form of accountability. I feel like it is much easier when, as you say, it's someone you care for, it's somebody who hasn't really done anything that wrong to you, or there isn't any kind of bad feelings between you.
What do you think, Casey?
I think it's similar to forgiveness in the sense that forgiveness for me is for myself to enable me to let go, to enable me to move forward, and be it with or without an apology. If I have forgiven someone for a wrong that they've done to me, it means that I'm not holding it in my heart and I'm not feeling a way about it, and I'm able to let go and move on with my life. So I would say similar with accountability. It means if I know I've done something wrong, because that's what it's about, it's acknowledging that you've done something wrong. So even if the person who you've wronged, their outlook or their idea is different to yours, ultimately, for you to acknowledge that you've done something that has upset somebody, because it has to have been brought to your attention. Otherwise, you could do something and you don't even know you've offended somebody. So that person's brought it to your attention. It can only be for your own betterment and for yourself that you're able to bring yourself to a level where you're acknowledging what you've done and are in a position to say, hold my hands up, that was a bit rubbish. Let's work on this. If you are looking at, I'm being accountable because, yes, I acknowledge what I was doing wrong and I've said sorry, but you're not then doing it from a wholehearted and a self place. You're doing it for the recognition that you've done it. and expecting with an expectation that you are going to receive the same back.
Yeah. So it sounds like all three of us are kind of in the same boat of, I'll not saying I've never been the person to withhold accountability because you don't deserve it. Maybe that's the Bush way of saying it. But like, I think, I feel like the real, like you said, the real kind of evidence of integrity or the real kind of personal growth or the personal gift to yourself, in the same way that the example you gave with forgiveness, is doing it irrespective of whether you believe the other person deserves it or not. Doing it because you want to grow and be the person that is able to do that throughout your interactions with the world, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Look at the trio we are.
Yeah, go on.
Righteousness and integrity. Yeah. Anyone else have any angles with this word accountability? When I was out there doing my research, Miss Kae-C, nothing else. Yeah. It made me think. The conversation I was having with my sister, it made me think about one of the conversation. I think it was the first recording that we had, right? And we was doing the introduction about, why people should listen to our perspectives. And there was a moment where, you bust up. You was laughing at me saying something.
Oh,
and I was, do you remember?
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't until I went back and watched when I went back to edit the episode, right? I realized he was actually right. He was actually right.
And I salute you for holding yourself accountable.
100%. And you know what it is? When I actually done the edit, I meant to, but it just slipped my mind, obviously, because life, and we're doing episode after episode and whatever. But it was very interesting to see that. Imagine we hadn't recorded that interaction, and it was just something that you obviously know what you saw because you was looking at the situation. But when I say until I saw the edit, until I was editing it, I was adamant.
You're like, what are you talking about?
100%. The only reason you was busting up is because of what I said, not because of my own nervous laugh because of what I said. So that's maybe an angle we can go down of, like, you kind of touched on it earlier, actually, when you were saying you can't. Sometimes it has to be brought to your attention. And even sometimes when it is brought to your attention, there has to be a level of
humility.
Something for you to actually really be able to almost ignore what your eyes are telling you. Like, I can look and say, okay, you're wearing a blue shirt.
Yeah.
So how is somebody going to then tell me that the shirt was green? No, it weren't. But until then, I've looked at the footage again, and now I'm like, oh, but how did I see it as blue before?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So there is a level of kind of like, we have this expectation of someone being able to take accountability and stuff. But in the moment, there has to be something to make somebody question their actual core belief of what they've seen or heard, experienced.
And I think when it is something about yourself as well that you kind of are sure is not the case, it's much harder to kind of accept that. And you find all of the reasons. Like my own situation, somebody close to me described me as even now saying it's like uncomfortable, described me as entitled. And for me, I was like, I'm like the least entitled person there is, like I don't feel entitled to anything because I've never really like had anything in that sense, but that was because of my definition of entitled and what I perceive entitled to be. So I was like, I'm the furthest thing from that. And I like spoke to one of our mutual closest friends and I was like, this is what she said. And she was like, absolutely not. Like, that's not you at all. And I was like, see, like, I agree. However, as time kind of went on and I had a little bit more of an understanding of what her version of entitled meant, I was like, oh, I get it. She doesn't mean entitled in the sense of like, I feel like I should have X, Y, and Z in this life, and I feel like you should be giving me X, Y, and Z. That wasn't necessarily the thing. It was more so entitled to his space, entitled to, because we are so close. It was a case of like, I didn't really ask for certain things or whatever. It was just taken as a given because we are so close, and because you get that from me, and because I give you that freely, I expected. Yeah, I didn't want to say the word, but yeah, but I expected the same in return, you know? And again, there's that whole thing of, well, you know, like I'm giving you this, and I thought this was like a mutual thing, like we're giving this to each other. So, like, why not? You know, like I didn't see it as an issue, and I definitely didn't see it as entitlement. So I was not able to take accountability for that at all. Although I would give the whole, like, I can see kind of why you see that, because this behavior and that behavior, I guess, you know, could be perceived as that. But there's all these, you know, caveats basically to why actually that is not the case. And as I say, it was not until down the line that I could recognize that, oh yeah, like her definition and her perception of entitlement is exactly what she said it was in relation to me. But it's just that at the time, not only was I unwilling to accept that, I couldn't see it, you know? So yeah, I think it's definitely a fair point that not only does that have to be raised, but you also have to see that as an issue too, for you to truly take accountability for it without the excuses and the, you know.
Could there be a level of humility that allows you to, even if you don't see it a person's way, still hold yourself accountable or accept accountability?
I think for me it would depend on the person and how well I know that person and how much I trust that person and their insight and opinions, to be totally honest. I think of just anybody, absolutely not, no. I think because, well, I think that kind of stems from, again, growing up and kind of living with people and being raised by people who told me I was a certain way or were doing certain things that I was not doing. Like, I know that they're not true. So I think for me to just accept blindly when I don't see it, it's like a no. Unless I know you, like if it was you, for example, because I know you, I trust you, we've got that level of relationship. I know you're not just trying to sully my character, basically. I know you're not just trying to put me down. I know that wherever it's coming from a place of
so
care
trust then.
and love and trust. Yeah.
So trust.
So if I trust the person and their intentions, then absolutely, I probably could. And I say probably. I probably could.
No guarantees.
There's no guarantees. I can't, you know. But I probably could take it and go, okay, like I trust where you're coming from, so I'll accept that and I'll take accountability for that. Otherwise, hell to the no.
Okay. So I can, to answer your question, I can probably say I could take accountability for the way you feel about a situation. I would, but I definitely think that I would maybe without the trust, I don't think I'll be able to take accountability for the facts of a situation without the trust. Yeah, that's what I would say as an answer to your question.
What about you? What about you, Miss Kae-C?
I'm saying that's interesting based on your realization when you saw the video, which means you didn't trust what I was saying to you about your behavior at that point in time.
100% I didn't. 100%. I thought you. What happened to me is what I thought happened to you. That's what. So it's not that I necessarily didn't trust. I think it was more that I thought you were mistaken, and I thought I was right, and I found out that I was mistaken and you was right. That's what happened.
There are all different types of stuff going on here because there's misunderstandings, there's trust,
100%.
there's relationship, how much you care about the person, one bag of things.
Before you move on though, like you said, you're just about to move on. Remember your point. It was interesting the words you used. You used the word humility, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to understand your perspective on like why humility comes into being able to take accountability. Maybe that's an obvious question, but I'm just interested. I just know that it wouldn't have necessarily been the word I would have used, but I would just want to know your thought process in using that word.
That would be because in a situation where, and the example you gave where I was saying one thing, but that wasn't your truth, if so to speak, it would, or if somebody had come to me and said, you know what, Casey, you did this last week and I really didn't like it, or you said this and I don't recall it going like that, down like that. If it did go down like that, that wasn't my intention. I have to humble myself in order to take accountability. If I'm going to stand in my truth and just say, well, I didn't mean it like that, or you took it the wrong way, or it's not my fault you feel that way, then I'm not holding myself accountable for how I've made that person feel. And if we're going back to self-development, I'm also not in a position for showing that I am working on myself and trying to, I guess, navigate through the situation respectfully. And so, yeah, being able to, and there's empathy as well, put yourself in someone else's position, accept that, you know, their truth and your truth could be two completely different things. I think humility is required to just say, do you know what? Or some people say we agree to disagree. And even in that, sometimes I find that phrase a little bit like, yeah, like you think what you think.
Shut up.
Like, yeah. Like, for me, that's a big old cop out. I prefer to reach a place of understanding, and agree to disagree is not a place of understanding. That's you think your way, I think my way. And I'm not saying that two people have to think the same way, but there could be a you think that way, and I understand why you think that way. You think that way because of A, B, C, D, or you think that way because of what you've been through or your whatever. And not everybody has the knowledge that we have as well. So, you know, that's not always going to be the case. But I just feel like agree to disagree is just trying to stop or finish a conversation that if you give a little bit more time, a little bit more respect, even, you can come to a place of, do you know what? I didn't agree with what you were saying before, but I see where you're coming from. And I find that's really important. And that is also part of humility.
That's difficult as well, though, because sometimes agree to disagree is the best way to stop this thing going super left. You know? Let's just agree to disagree. Let's revisit this another day because I'm right and you're wrong. Now leave me alone.
Yeah.
So I'm just when you were talking about, I was thinking of myself all the times where I've said those exact words has been purely because the way my blood's boiling right now, I'm due to say some stuff that isn't productive or constructive to us resolving the situation. Let's just agree to disagree. I think my way, you think your way, and leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like when that term comes into play, agree to disagree, it tends to be, I mean, at least when it's, when it's happened in a situation I've been in, it tends to be where it's just headbutting. It's just kind of going round in circles. Either I'm kind of half taking heed of what you're saying and you're not taking heed of what I'm saying, or neither of us are hearing what either one of us has to say. The last time I remember using that term was a discussion about Andrew Tate with another female, believe it or not. And I was like, we can't continue to have this conversation because it's going to get nasty and let's just not go there. So, yeah.
Maybe that could be another episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's just not the only time I will willingly kind of agree to disagree is if I feel like if we go any further it's gonna get real aggy. And we're probably not gonna come back to him.
Dead and buried.
Yeah.